Well, this welfare status is certainly happening while the Finnish politics are in a complete flux. The government has fallen, though anarchy does not reign, and the old government continues as a caretaker government. The social and healthcare reform has been finally declared to be dead after the government successfully kicked the can for 2 weeks and avoided taking responsibility. Indeed, many have said that cancelling the privatizing reform that would have worsened the working conditions for many women in the female-dominated healthcare sector is the best Women's Day present the government could have provided for the women of Finland. But what does it all mean? We don't know yet how the chips will fall, so apart from this brief note I will have to let you down. My choice is to dedicate this show to some other topics that also deserve attention in the midst of social and healthcare reform drama, and return to the governmental fallout in 2 weeks. Now, we'll start with a sometimes ignored aspect of the welfare state, the commitment to regionalization. The Finnish welfare state was essentially built by 3 different parties: the Social Democrats, People's Democrats, and Agrarian Alliance later Centre. The other 2 parties were left-wing, and their goal for the welfare state saw it as a defense of workers' interests and a part of a process for the construction of socialism. However, for the agrarians, later Centre, the most central thing was serving their constituency, the farmers. And they were also interested in staving off communism by bringing jobs and services to the poor people of northern Finland, who found communism greatly appealing. In the process, they also contributed to the industrialization of small towns, so the sons and daughters of the farmsteads would not need to move all the way to big cities of southern Finland or to Sweden to find work. Now this created an economic structure, which means that Finland has many local centres all around the country. The idea of a welfare state is still a state that serves all of the citizens, not just those in the larger cities and towns of southern Finland. And this means copious subsidies to the less inhabited areas, including farming subsidies, help for various new industrial projects, as well as infrastructure projects like roads and bridges. Now, some people would say that it is all a form of pork-barrel politics, particularly the sort of neoliberals who wish to deconstruct the welfare state to improve it, and who also find the regionalization to be generally a bad thing for various reasons. Thus, one part of neoliberalization in Finland is promoting urbanization, or more specifically, removing factors countering what is called the unstoppable process of people moving to larger and larger cities. It is not a surprise then that the latest prediction from 2 weeks ago showed that future population growth in Finland will be concentrated in 3 different areas: Tampere, my hometown, Turku in the southwest, and of course primarily the capital region Helsinki, Espoo and Vantaa. Somewhat worryingly, even some on the left are sometimes prone to fall into such narratives, perhaps due to the idea that the countryside is inherently conservative, backwards looking. However, such narratives may very well lead to the idea of progress being associated with economic structures, such as the ones that are increasingly market-based and which leave the poorer and the citizens of those poorer areas behind. This is particularly dangerous considering that climate change may lead to entire economies around the world changing so drastically that we need to be prepared once again to grow and make things in Finland that we now import from the abroad. Now many would find it odd that such developments take place when the Centre Party is in power, after all that is the old Fairmos Party. However, this shows precisely how the Centre has grown apart from its roots. The party that was supposed to provide a so-called humanistic, decentralized alternative to the materialism of socialism and capitalism has become a centre-right party, which is mainly separated from the National Coalition by the fact that the National Coalition is more backed by private healthcare companies and the Centre by the forest industry sector. This could be seen very well in the Centre Prime Minister Juha Sipilä's attack on the so-called red-green parties last week, he claimed that these parties would abolish all use of forests. Of course, this is connected to an important debate on the balance of the economy, including the forest sector and the environment, but such attacks mainly demonstrate how much Centre's current idea of regional policy is tied around business interests. What we need is a regional policy which takes into account the holistic development of the whole country as a part of a welfare state. This involves crafting a better social and healthcare reform, a transit policy that improves our rail and road network, and an economic policy that brings good jobs all around Finland in a way that is also socially and environmentally sustainable. All of these could form a part of a Finnish Green New Deal, where the green represents both the environmental movement and the green pastures and forests of the Finnish countryside. Now, one aspect of regional policy, of course, is education, and this has also been a topic of debate in Finland in the past weeks. If there is one thing that our welfare state is famous for, it would be our educational system. The educational system still continues to receive frequent praise among foreign media, and teachers from all over the world come to study the so-called Finnish miracle. There are of course massive upsides to all of this, not only for the national brand, but also in how this has essentially made the public education system privatization proof. Our healthcare system might have been up for sale for the highest bidder for some time, but not even the most hardcore capitalistic types would dare publicly suggest legalizing for-profit schooling in Finland. Still, that does not mean that the school system is perfect by any rate. Indeed, the fame of the educational system also often covers up for the fact that it's not always equal for everyone. Now, you certainly cannot charge for running a school, and even private schools cannot charge any fees and will be funded by the state, meaning that there are only a few of them, mostly alternative schooling like Waldorf and Montessori schools. However, many families still feel the burden of supplementary materials such as school books and other school supplies. Currently, the high cost of school books may be prohibitive for the children of poorer families. Thus, a citizens' initiative was initiated recently by secondary school students who wish for truly costless education, meaning that the school materials will be also provided free of charge. This already applies to elementary schooling in Finland, secondary schooling, which means both lukio, the academic track, which generally prepares you for academic studies, and vocational education, which prepares you directly for working life, though also allows for academic track later on. The initiative would have covered both options. The cost of the initiative would not have been too high, as it would have made it possible for the state to buy school supplies in bulk to bring down the cost. The Finnish Citizens' Initiatives mean that if citizens collect 50,000 signatures on proposed law, the parliament is, at least in theory, required to process the law proposal in committees and then bring it to a vote in the parliament. But this does not always factualize, however. The government can often find a reason to bypass citizens' initiatives that it does not like. This time the governing parties refer to a bad phrasing in the citizens' initiative as the students who had formulated the initiative and refer to powers that the parliament does not, exactly speaking, have. Surely this is something the government could have fixed in a committee if it had only possessed the actual will to handle this issue as it should have. However, this is only symbolic of the wider lack of willingness the government has had in developing education in Finland. It is not only this government that has dropped the ball and made cuts, but also previous governments. However, after the previous government's cuts, all parties pledged not to make any further education cuts, and the leaders of Centre and National Coalition posted signs pledging that, the so-called educational pledge. Once in the government, both parties ended up breaking this pledge. Shameful. Furthermore, the government has made some deep cuts in the university spending, saying that these cuts do not matter as the universities can now raise more and more of private funding just to cover for the cost of all of this. Of course, this is not a solution to the wider problem of universities becoming narrowly focused tools of businesses. Indeed, it very much heightens this problem. All in all, considering the future of the welfare state, education is one of the most critical sectors, whether we are talking about children, youth or adults. Most of education's benefits are immaterial, of course, but still, a small high-tech country like Finland cannot compete in wages, but can compete in expertise. And such expertise not only comes from a narrow focus on a few industry-approved subjects, but from a combination of practical fields with a wide humanistic education, which prepares you for taking in all possible perspectives. Well, that's all for these 2 weeks. A good day or night or whatever once again.